Are the Maple Leafs about to make a bold and controversial roster move? Let's discuss that in the latest in Leafland. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morisuti. What's happening, brother?
Feeling pretty good. You know, we're tasting. We're just like barely tasting the start of training camp.
One more sleep, bud. One more sleep. And training camps open up. We'll start with some off-ice stuff, media weigh-ins. We'll get to hear from the guys. We get to break down some comments about how they're feeling after the off season. Everyone's going to be in the best shape of their life. And then the on-ice stuff starts, Thursday? And first game Sunday against the Ottawa Senators at 3 o'clock. So before you know it, man, we'll be back. We'll be back breaking down real hockey games pretty soon. It's all coming within the week. It's the eve of camp today, and the training camp officially kicks off tomorrow. There is dog's going wild out there.
Dog is excited for the start of camp.
He's getting excited. He's getting rocked up and ready to go. There is some controversial news though that we need to discuss here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, kind of the latest in Leafland, and it really stems from a conversation that was had on TSN 1050's First Up yesterday. TSN Hockey Insider Darren Dreger was on the show, and it's not that he was suggesting that the Maple Leafs are going to sign Dylan Dubé, one of the players that was involved in the Hockey Canada scandal. They were acquitted and will be eligible to sign with the team at some point over the next couple of months. I believe it was October 15th they can sign with teams, and then they'll be eligible to play come December 1st. They can actually play in the NHL again. So that is the suspension, I guess, for these players. And Dreger came out and said that, both Michael McLeod and Dylan Dubé are not going to have problems finding homes, and then went on to mention that he wouldn't be surprised if Leafs GM Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs put their hat in the ring and take a decent swing at Dylan Dubé. Mentions that there's obviously the history there. Dylan Dubé drafted Brad Treliving drafted Dylan Dubé back in the day, and there's ties there from their time in Calgary. He did say that Toronto's not considered a front runner, and that it doesn't mean that the Maple Leafs are going to sign Dylan Dubé. He does not have that type of information, but did say that they still do want to improve in their forward group in the top six, and a player like that could fill that role, end quote, Dreger said. So bit of a controversial situation, obviously, for the Maple Leafs here. You want the team to have as many good players and add as much talent as possible, but that comes with great risk, and obviously with what went down and the perception of these players, I don't know if it's worth it to go down that path.
With this situation, I don't see the value. We're talking about a player who, at best, the last few years in Calgary was a third line player. Yeah, he scored back-to-back 18 goals, but we're not. You have to weigh the risk of the on ice, what he brings on the ice versus what he could potentially do off the ice and in your own locker room, right? I think in a situation like this, first off, you got to talk to the players already on the team and talk to your leadership group and be like, look, this is something we've talked about. What are you guys thinking about this? Because if you go and you bring we know what the backlash to a move can be. And the last thing you'd want to do to your organization is have your own players have to talk about something like this, how they feel about adding a player who's, a part of this this whole Hockey Canada scandal. And I just don't know, especially in a market like Toronto,
right?
Like, it's not worth it. I talked to one person, they said, well, it will definitely be a story for a bit, but eventually, in a lot of these situations, it sort of fizzles out a little bit. I'm like, but this is pretty bad. This is the situation. Like, this was like I've been covering the how with the whole coverage of the whole story from the beginning. It was brutal, the whole situation. And so it's just really worth it. I understand these players were found not guilty, and the NHLPA push for these players to have the opportunity to resume their NHL careers, and I get all that. But at the same point, teams have to make their own decisions to debate whether this is even worth the backlash, as we're talking like that. That's where I think it really comes down to.
Yeah, and it's a very valid point, right? Like, especially in Toronto, as you mentioned, the market is so loud, and the media is always going to be there. It could just take up too much attention and just create a bad vibe around the group. I'm not sure it's worth it for a player of his stature. Like, you talk about all the off ice issues that it could cause, but is it worth it? Sometimes some could make the argument, like, okay, if this guy was a bona fide top line winger, okay, sometimes you can deal with that type of controversial backlash if he can back it up on the ice. I don't even think he's gonna be able to back it up on the ice. Like, you look at Dylan Dubé, and yeah, he had a couple of 18-goal seasons a couple of years ago in Calgary, back in 21-22 and 22-23. But his final year at Calgary did not go well at all. Prior to the allegations and prior to the whole court proceedings, he only had 7 points in 43 games and was a -13 in 23-24. Obviously missed all of last season as he was undergoing the court case, but did play in the KHL. So he did go over the season, play hockey, played 42 games in the KHL, and only had 4 goals and 11 points. Now, probably had a lot on his plate. Not sure if hockey was, the main thing on his mind at the time. But it's been a couple of years since this guy has played at a high level, and a high enough level to fill what the Maple Leafs are suggesting, a guy who they want to fill a top 6 role. I'm not sure Dylan Dubé is a top 6 guy anymore. Like, I think that time has passed. He hasn't played meaningful hockey either in like a year and a half. He's already 27 years old. He's a fairly undersized player. Like, he played with a little bit of grit, I'll give him that. But, at sub 6 foot, 185 pounds, he was already kind of behind the 8 ball. I don't know.